And it is not the builder who is remembered, but the one who names the city.
Every masterpiece, every monument, every invention that changed the world was shaped by calloused hands, sleepless nights, and silent rooms. But history does not remember the ones in the shadows. It remembers the silhouette in the light. To understand power, you must unlearn the morality of effort. You must understand a darker, colder truth.
True power is not earned through labor. It is earned through possession of credit, of narrative, of legacy.
This is Law 7 of the 48 Laws of Power. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. From the moment we enter the world, we're taught to revere effort, to believe that success is the rightful reward of the hardest worker, that greatness will inevitably rise from the soil of struggle. But that is a fairy tale written for the comfort of the obedient. In truth, the ones who rise the highest are not always the ones who work the hardest. They are the ones who understand leverage. They are the ones who recognize that creation without control is servitude in disguise. In the great courts of medieval Europe, kings did not lift swords to forge their empires. They did not plant crops or command battalions on the battlefield. Instead, they built systems. They surrounded themselves with laborers, artists, soldiers, and thinkers, men whose brilliance served not their own name, but the image of the crown. While others bled, they held the throne. While others composed, they signed their name beneath the finished symphony. And history, written by the voices of power, remembered only the signature, not the symphony. This is not injustice. This is architecture, an invisible structure behind every story of greatness. In every age, you will find this same pattern. Behind the statue, the mason who carved it. Behind the book, the ghostwriter who shaped the paragraphs. Behind the leader, a council of silent minds whose names never reached the public. These are the ghosts of power, the forgotten, the useful. They believed their work would speak for itself, but history does not listen to the whisper of effort. It listens to the echo of credit. Now let us be clear. This law is not an invitation to theft. It is a revelation of strategy. You do not rise by being the best at the task. You rise by being the one seen as essential to its success, by placing yourself at the final turn of the wheel, at the last stroke of the brush, in the spotlight when the applause begins. The credit you take does not always belong to you, but if it is not taken, it vanishes into dust. To the observer, perception is authorship, and in the absence of clarity, credit flows to the boldest hand. There are two roles in this world, the builder and the face, the one who toils beneath the surface and the one who receives the praise above it. The builder may know the truth. He may even feel superior in silence. But when the monuments are carved and the names are etched in stone, it is not his name that will endure. The world does not reward truth. It rewards presentation. Mastering this law does not mean abandoning contribution. It means mastering placement. If you are the strategist, the architect, the director, you must know when to step forward, when to claim, when to let others shine, until the moment arrives for you to step into the glow they've created.
Not every hand needs to be dirty. Some hands must remain clean, so they are ready to sign the deed once the labor is done.
Is it wrong to claim credit for what others build? Some say yes, but history says otherwise. History has always crowned the one who takes the final bow, and the crowd, too dazzled to remember the cast, applauds whoever stands at center stage.
Power does not reward the invisible. It rewards the symbolic.
To survive in this world, to rise in it, You must accept this law or become a tool for someone else's legend.
The hand that builds is forgotten, but the name etched into time remains.
Now that you understand the law, let me show you what happens when genius forgets to guard its name. Our first story begins in the age of electricity, where two men lit the world, but only one became its legend. In the battle for electricity, two men walked opposite roads. One believed in beauty, in vision, in genius as a sacred gift. The other believed in visibility, in branding, in power as a claim to be made, not a reward to be earned. One was Nikola Tesla, the other, Thomas Edison. And only one of them would be remembered as a genius by the masses. Nikola Tesla was born in lightning, not metaphorically, literally. A thunderstorm raged the night of his birth. He would go on to become one of the most brilliant minds to ever touch the world of science. Alternating current, the Tesla coil, wireless energy, robotics, X-ray imaging. His visions were ahead of his time, too far ahead. Tesla saw the future. Edison sold the present. Thomas Edison, by contrast, was not a genius in the traditional sense. He did not invent the light bulb. He improved upon it. He did not discover electricity. He packaged it. What Edison did understand was Law 7, that the world does not reward invention. It rewards ownership. And history remembers the one who plants the flag, not the one who maps the terrain. In the 1880s, America was on the brink of a revolution. The world was ready to be lit. But there were two competing visions for how electricity would flow. Tesla's system, alternating current, efficient, scalable, future-proof. Edison's system, direct current, clunky, limited range, expensive. By all logic, Tesla should have won outright. But Edison didn't fight with better technology. He fought with narrative, with fear, with publicity. He launched a campaign, vicious and theatrical, to paint Tesla's invention as dangerous. He paid children to electrocute animals in public using AC. He lobbied politicians. He used the media as a weapon, not to explain, but to distort. Tesla remained in the lab. Edison stood on the stage. Tesla, naive in the ways of business, eventually partnered with George Westinghouse. Together, they brought AC power to the 1893 World's Fair. The night the fair lit up, over 200,000 light bulbs powered by Tesla's current should have been Tesla's moment of triumph. Instead, the headlines didn't say Tesla lights the world. They said, electricity lights the fair. And in the public mind, electricity still meant Edison. Credit once again had shifted away from the hand that built to the one who had already branded the idea. As the years passed, Tesla's brilliance never dimmed, but his fame did. He built machines no one understood. He proposed technologies no one believed were real. He died nearly penniless, feeding pigeons, whispering ideas no one would fund. Edison, meanwhile, lived as an American hero. He was given awards, patents, public monuments. His name was printed in textbooks. Even now, school children are taught that he invented the light bulb, a convenient lie that survives because no one challenges the myth of the visible victor. Tesla gave the world his genius. Edison took the world's applause. This is not simply the story of two inventors. It is the anatomy of power. Tesla believed that brilliance alone would earn him a place in history. He was wrong. Edison understood that in the arena of legacy, control over the story is more valuable than authorship of the work. He used other people's ideas, other people's hands, other people's dreams. But when the curtain fell, he stood alone in the spotlight. power rewards not the creator, but the curator of perception. And perception is reality to the masses. Tesla died in obscurity. He was a man who gave his intellect to the world and received silence in return. But today, some remember him. Statues rise, documentaries are made, yet the lesson remains bitter and clear. If you do not learn how to protect your legacy, someone else will use your work to build their empire. Tesla showed us the cost of brilliance without strategy. Edison showed us the power of ownership without shame. And in a world governed by Law 7, only the one who takes the credit controls the narrative. Only the one who controls the narrative writes the future.
Genius without credit is forgotten. Credit without genius is enshrined.
But not all credit is stolen in laboratories and factories. Some is absorbed in silence, through architecture, ritual, and light. Now, step into the Palace of Versailles, where power did not rule with swords, but with mirrors and sunlight. He never swung a sword on the battlefield. He did not write the laws of France. He did not build the palace that bears his name. And yet, he was France. L'État, c'est moi. I am the state. Louis XIV understood what few rulers ever have. That to rule absolutely, you do not need to do the work. You only need to make yourself the symbol that all work serves. The Palace of Versailles was not built by Louis XIV. It was originally a humble hunting lodge, far from the chaos of Paris. But Louis transformed it into a golden cage, a theater of control where every movement, every glance, every ritual reinforced one message. All greatness flows through the king. Every artist who painted, every architect who built, every musician who performed, they did so under his name, for his glory, by his command. Even the sun itself, in sculpture and ceiling, bowed toward him. Credit in Versailles was absorbed like sunlight into the crown. At Versailles, Louis XIV didn't govern with paperwork. He governed through performance. Each morning, the king awoke to a ritual called the lever, the rising. Courtiers, nobles, ambassadors, they lined up to watch him wake, dress, eat, and speak. He turned daily existence into ceremony, a living opera in which he was both star and sun. And behind that golden curtain, something far more brilliant happened. While his nobles obsessed over proximity, fashion, and favor, Louis quietly centralized power in the shadows. He let them distract themselves with gossip and drama. Meanwhile, his bureaucrats, hand-picked and loyal, rewrote the administrative structure of France. He did not write the ledgers. He did not audit the tax system. He did not redraw the laws. But when it was all done, the world believed he had done it. He surrounded himself with the most talented minds of his age. Colbert for economics, Louvois for the army, Lebrun for the arts, Molière for theatre. Each of these men was a genius in their field, but none of them ever became larger than the king. Their work served his identity. Their brilliance was absorbed into his myth. He created a court where talent was celebrated, only as long as it orbited him. You could rise, but never outshine. Your reward was proximity. Your purpose was to decorate the sun. Louis XIV didn't just rule over nobles, he domesticated them. These were once powerful men, lords of distant provinces, war-hardened and rebellious. But in Versailles, they became courtiers, obligated to perform elaborate social rituals, competing for meaningless titles and favors, spending fortunes to remain fashionable, visible, relevant. And while they danced and schemed in velvet, Louis ruled in silence, through ministers they never saw. He had outsourced rebellion by giving the nobles just enough vanity to make them obedient. They did the work of their own pacification. He took the credit for national unity. Louis understood something deeper than mere governance. He understood theatre. He understood that image outlives truth. The royal portraits, the statues, the gilded ceilings, they weren't decoration. They were doctrine. In every painting, he appears tall, poised, divine. In every myth, he is noble, victorious. Even his emblem, the sun, wasn't chosen by accident. The sun gives life, commands the sky, is inescapable. And yet, it does not labor, it does not work. It simply shines, and all things move around it. In this symbol, Louis encoded his philosophy. The most powerful man is the one who never needs to prove it. Louis XIV ruled France for over 72 years. By the time he died, France was broke, bloodied, exhausted. But his legacy was untouched. He had become a myth, sculpted by the efforts of others, polished by architecture, by protocol, by power itself. The nobles did the social work. The ministers did the administrative work. The artists did the cultural work. And Louis took the credit for an age. To this day, he is remembered as the Sun King, a title that casts his glow across centuries, even as those who made him shine are long forgotten.
True power does not lift the world. It convinces the world that it is the world.
Where Louis reigned through performance, another ruler reigned through shadows. She did not wear a crown. She did not hold a throne. And yet, she ruled kings like pawns. Her name was Catherine de' Medici. She was never crowned an empress. She never led an army. She never wrote a single law with her own hand. But for over 3 decades, Catherine de' Medici ruled France, without ever wearing the title of ruler. In the chessboard of royal power, she was not a piece. She was the hand moving them. Born in 1519 to the powerful Medici family, Catherine was no stranger to wealth. But she was not born into affection. Her parents died while she was young. She was passed between relatives like a forgotten coin. But power taught her early. It taught her how to survive among men who held swords, crowns, and egos. By becoming indispensable and invisible, she would never be loved, but she would be feared and obeyed. At age 14, Catherine was married off to Prince Henri of France. He never loved her. He gave his heart and much of his influence to his mistress, Diane de Poitiers. Catherine bore him children and then waited. And when Henri died in a jousting accident, Catherine was no longer a political bride. She was now the mother of a king. But her son, Francis II, was only 15. The real power was claimed by nobles. That's when Catherine made her move. She did not ask for power. She positioned herself behind it. For the next 30 years, Catherine ruled through her sons, Francis II, Charles IX, Henry III. Each was young, inexperienced, easily influenced, especially by their mother. She played the long game. She whispered behind curtains. She advised, soothed, threatened. And every time a crisis emerged, she offered a solution. One she had often arranged in advance. The nobility believed they were working with a queen mother. In truth, they were dancing to the rhythm of a political ghost. Catherine's genius was not in policy. It was in human psychology. She exploited fear. She leveraged rumor. She divided and conquered with precision. She orchestrated political marriages like moves in a game of Go, uniting Protestants and Catholics, calming rival houses, always pretending neutrality. But neutrality was the disguise. She kept her enemies close, fed them just enough power to make them dependent, then turned their weaknesses into her strings. Credit flowed to her sons. Control flowed through her hands. Then came the darkest chapter, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572. Thousands of Protestants slaughtered in Paris. The streets ran red. The monarchy remained intact. Did Catherine order it? No written command was found. No speech survives. But her fingerprints were everywhere. The timing, the marriage that brought Protestant leaders to Paris, the failure to protect them. She did not hold the sword, but it moved when she lifted her finger. The work was done by others. The consequences belonged to history. The legacy remained her son's, and the blame faded into the mist. Catherine understood the cost of being too visible. She let her sons bear the weight of decisions. She let ministers and dukes execute plans she conceived. When plots failed, they fell. She remained. She didn't crave the credit. She craved the results. She created alliances, silenced uprisings, preserved the crown through chaos. Yet her name was never etched in marble beside France's great kings. And that was her victory. She wasn't remembered as a tyrant or a failure. She was remembered as a survivor, one who kept a kingdom from shattering by letting others wear the crown she secretly wielded. By the time she died, Catherine had outlived her enemies. She had ruled longer than many kings, and she had passed on her bloodline to the throne. Not once did she sit upon it, but she never needed to. Power isn't always taken by force. Sometimes it is worn like perfume, invisible but undeniable. Catherine de' Medici did not labor for credit. She engineered outcomes and allowed others to believe they were in control. In a world obsessed with visibility, she proved a deeper truth. The most effective ruler is often the one you do not see.
She never ruled by title. She ruled by consequence.
Power in the court was about manipulation. Power in the modern world is about media. What happens when one man owns every voice and every truth bends to his pen? Welcome to the empire of William Randolph Hearst. You don't have to fight a war to be remembered for one. You don't have to write the truth to be seen as the voice of truth. You don't even need to speak if you own the mouths that do. This is the power of narrative ownership, and no one in modern history mastered it more than William Randolph Hearst. He didn't just report the world, he rewrote it, and he did it using Law 7 on a national scale. Born in 1863, Hearst inherited his father's newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner, in his 20s. It wasn't the inheritance of ink that gave him power. It was what he understood about ink, that words could be sold, that truth could be shaped, that credit could be engineered. He hired the best journalists, the most provocative artists, the cleverest satirists. But he didn't elevate their names, he elevated his. The stories they wrote that became his headlines, their investigations became his triumphs. Their voices disappeared behind the masthead. Hearst's strategy was simple and merciless. Find the most brilliant minds in journalism and buy them. Poach them from rivals. Promise them freedom. Pay them well. And once they worked for him, their words were no longer theirs. Their legacy became his legacy. Pulitzer had done this too, but Hearst pushed it further. He didn't just print the news, he created it. He hired artists and claimed credit for their exposure. He funded investigations and absorbed their prestige. He used scandals written by his staff to make himself look like the protector of the people. The public never knew the names behind the bylines, but they knew his. The most infamous example of Hearst's power came in 1898. The American battleship Maine exploded in Havana Harbor. No one knew why, but Hearst saw an opportunity, not for truth, but for control. He splashed headlines with rage. "Remember the Maine! To hell with Spain!" No evidence, no investigation, just emotion, just theater. And when illustrator Frederick Remington told Hearst that things were calm in Cuba, Hearst allegedly replied, "You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war." Whether he said it or not, the result is undeniable. Hearst's papers stirred the American public into fury. The government declared war. And Hearst? He never touched a battlefield, but he took credit for the conflict, calling it his war. While soldiers bled in the trenches, Hearst dined in mansions and signed editorials. The work was done by politicians, spies, generals, and writers. But the name in lights was his. By the 1920s, Hearst's media empire spanned 28 newspapers, magazines, movie studios, and radio stations. He built Hearst Castle, a sprawling fantasy palace where he entertained Hollywood elites. Marble statues from Greece, wood panels from Gothic cathedrals, paintings looted from Europe's old families. He had taken credit not just from people, but from cultures. His entire estate was an edifice of borrowed glory, built by architects, filled by historians, styled by artists, funded by workers. But the name on the gates, the name etched into the myth, was one: Hearst. Hearst didn't invent anything. He didn't write the editorials. He didn't shoot the films. He didn't even read most of the newspapers he owned. But it didn't matter. He had mastered the one role that outlives all others: the man who takes credit at scale. He turned talent into tribute. He turned stories into symbols. He turned a nation's mind into his property. And when Orson Welles created Citizen Kane, a thinly veiled portrait of Hearst's life, Hearst tried to destroy the film, calling it lies. Not because it was false, but because it revealed the truth about him, that he built an empire out of other men's words, and carved his name into their silence. Today, few remember the names of Hearst's editors, his reporters, his photographers, even the artists whose paintings now rot behind castle glass, but his legacy remains. His methods survive in media titans and tech moguls alike. William Randolph Hearst showed the world that in the age of information, you don't need to tell the truth. You only need to own the truth tellers. This is Law 7, taken to its most industrial, imperial, and dangerous extreme. The work is invisible. The credit is immortal.
History belongs not to the storyteller, but to the man who signs the front page.
But long before printing presses and headlines, the greatest theft of credit happened in stone. It was not hidden. It was eternal. A theft so vast, we still speak the thief's name 4,000 years later. His name was Khufu, but he wasn't alone. They stand unmoved by time, monuments of precision, ambition, and silence. The Great Pyramids, built over 4,500 years ago, are among humanity's most breathtaking achievements. Yet of the thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of workers who bled, toiled, and died to raise them, not one name is remembered. Instead, only one name echoes through time: Khufu. This is the purest expression of Law 7, and get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. The pyramids were not the work of a man. They were the work of a civilization. Stone blocks, each weighing up to 80 tons, were dragged across sand and chiseled into perfect alignment. Complex tunnels were carved without modern tools. Graves have been found for overseers and workers, many with signs of arthritis, fractures, and heavy labor. But these builders were not honored. They were not recorded in gold. They were buried near the monuments they raised, as if to say, your bones belong to the legacy, not the memory. The pharaohs gave nothing of their own hands. They gave orders, and in return, they took eternity. How did they do it? How did they convince an entire people to give their lives to raise a tomb? The answer: divine identity. The pharaoh was not merely a man, he was a god on earth. His word was divine law, his presence sacred. He did not need to justify his glory, it was assumed. So when the people built the pyramid, they weren't just building a tomb, they were building a gateway to the afterlife, a beacon of divine order. And in that illusion they surrendered their labor and their names to the symbol of God King. The pharaohs didn't just take credit, they transformed credit into religion. Khufu's name is carved into the inner chambers of the Great Pyramid. But not once is there a record of him lifting a stone. What survives? Statues, hieroglyphs, poems praising his greatness, all created by others, all echoing his name. The thousands who did the work are gone. The one who claimed the credit remains carved into time. And even in modern history books, Khufu is credited with building the pyramid. He didn't. He absorbed the work. He immortalized himself through others' backs, through others' brilliance, through others' death. This wasn't unique to Khufu. The Egyptian state was built on a cycle of ritual labor and centralized glory. The scribes wrote, the engineers designed, the slaves and laborers hauled, the priests conducted ceremonies. But the memory belonged to the pharaoh. His name was etched into every achievement, no matter who truly created it. It was a national system of credit transfer, a civilization built upon the erasure of individual genius, to preserve the myth of divine rule. These pyramids were more than tombs. They were machines of memory, designed to erase the worker and glorify the symbol. Even in modern times, archaeologists must dig and guess, decipher and debate, just to scrape together names of the builders. They left behind no legacy, no children who carried their memory, no statues with their image. They built the most immortal structures in history and vanished into the dust beneath them. Meanwhile, the pharaohs, who did no labor, remain icons of human greatness. Khufu was not a builder. He was a name, a symbol, a god carved by other people's work. But that is all history needs. He mastered Law 7 before it was ever written, and his victory is so complete. We still speak his name 4,000 years later. The pyramids do not teach us only about architecture. They teach us about power. That credit, if centralized, can outlive cities. That the work of thousands can be devoured by a single symbol. That legacy does not require labor, only ownership of memory.
The most immortal name is the one carved by other people's hands.
Now you've seen the victories. You've seen the crowns taken by silence. But what does it cost to take what you didn't build? What happens when the ones you used rise in the dark? Let us step into the shadows of this law and see what they remember. Power, when used without conscience, leaves a trail of silence. But silence is not peace. It is the sound of swallowed rage, of forgotten brilliance, of lives lived in the shadows of someone else's glory. Law 7 is effective, but it is not harmless. Every throne taken without labor, every applause received without effort, every monument built on the backs of others, leaves behind something broken. When you take credit for the work of others, you don't just gain admiration, you often steal their reason to keep creating. Artists buried by executives, scientists overshadowed by CEOs, advisors, wives, friends, whose ideas changed the world, but whose names were erased before they could rise. The world forgets them, but they do not forget the world. they watch, they remember, and sometimes they retaliate. Behind every man who steals credit, there is someone who feels robbed. It begins as bitterness, then grows into sabotage, then sometimes into revenge. History is filled with protégés who became enemies, with partners who turned whistleblowers, with servants who waited decades for their moment. You can drain credit for years, but eventually, someone wants it back. And the more you've taken, the more they want to destroy everything you built. There is a fine line between being strategic and being a parasite. To borrow brilliance is one thing. To live entirely off the labor of others, to build no value, to contribute nothing, is to become disposable the moment someone else learns to shine alone. People tolerate a master who guides. They resent a thief who takes. And when your name becomes associated not with power, but plagiarism, the fall is swift and merciless. Just ask those disgraced authors, the fallen tech moguls, the ghost-written celebrities exposed too late. Credit stolen without purpose becomes rot. Even for the one who takes credit, there is a toll. When your entire legacy is built on the work of others, there is always the lingering question, did I earn this? Am I really great, or just good at pretending? Some bury the doubt. Some believe the lie so long it becomes truth. But some, the ones who still possess a shred of soul, live in quiet terror of being exposed. To take the credit without doing the work is to live on a cliff edge, forever fearing the wind that reveals what's beneath. If you are the one doing the work, and you do not learn to protect your contribution, you will be forgotten. The world rewards narrative, not effort, perception, not contribution. Your work may be brilliant, but unless you claim it, unless you shape how it is seen, someone else will do it for you, and in doing so, they will erase you. There is a subtle art here. To lead, you must be seen, but to last, you must also be respected. Taking credit is sometimes necessary, in battle, in politics, in business. When you are the one carrying the risk, the weight, the vision, you must own the results. But when others have carried you, when they have offered you their talent, their time, their hearts, and you offer them nothing in return, that is not power, that is cowardice. And power built on cowardice eventually collapses. There is nothing wrong with rising on the shoulders of others, but make sure those shoulders do not crumble beneath you. Give credit when it is wise, take credit when it is necessary, but never forget, the shadows remember, and the work you didn't do may one day return to claim what you stole. Law 7 is not a rule for the heartless. It is a warning. That glory without grounding becomes a ghost. That applause, when undeserved, eventually turns to accusation. That the hand that takes too much eventually drops it all. And now, the final choice is yours. You've seen the masters. You've heard their ghosts. You know the cost and the reward. So the question is no longer, what is Law 7? The question is, will you become the one whose name remains?
You've seen the law in motion in the gilded halls of Versailles, in the pages of forgotten newspapers, etched into stone by hands no one remembers. And now the mirror turns to you. Will you be the one who builds, or the one whose name remains? Will you give your genius away, or carve it into the world before the world forgets you? That is Law 7. The man who takes the credit is the one who gets remembered, the one who stays in the shadows. becomes part of the dust. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't. In the end, you are the master of your own life.